Now that we have his signature, we are going to be going live to YouTube shortly. Okay, I think we are live on YouTube. Okay, we're about to start the shir. Today's broadcast is sponsored internally. It's independently sponsored, but it should be in Lishmas. All those neshamas who people sponsored for them in the past. A and B is it should be a schus for Klal Yisrael that we should get out of this corona mess very shortly. And most important, Akiva's making chasna today. The chasna should be b'shatayv and tzlachas, and he should see lots of nachas from Ephraim and from all his children.
Amen.
Amen.
I'm just sharing my screen so we can get started. Hakita, we're learning about someone who's an amputee today. Hakita Yosy bekav shaloi. He's allowed to go out with this stump that they used to use. So they used to use a primitive type of prosthesis. Basically, it was a wooden stump that had a small curvature in it so that the stump of his cut-off leg would fit into it. And it had a series of straps that would hold it together. I did WhatsApp a picture of it. And it's a pretty primitive device. Divrei Reb Meir, that's the halacha of Reb Meir. And she says that the reason why you're allowed to go out with it is because the minal didehu, it's considered a shoe. The Rabbi Yosy says a person's allowed to go out with that on Shabbos because the lav tachshidu, it's not considered a tachshid. It's not considered part of him. We don't look at it like a shoe. That's how Rashi learns the machlokes. Tosfos actually doesn't like this because Tosfos has rayas. I'm sorry? Tosfos has rayas. What is the statement place? Tosfos has rayas that this is a shoe and that should be considered a shoe. He brings rayas from other places in Shas. We write chalitza. So Tosfos says that the machlokes is whether or not there's a chash that if it falls off, he's going to carry it back. And that's what the machlokes depends on. So Zok Tehillah Gemara. Zok Tehillah B'Shavayter. The Mieshlo Beis Kibbel Kasisim. Some of these prostheses, they didn't just have a curvature at the top for the person's stump. Rather, it had a deeper receptacle inside it, and they would put padding inside. The old version of padding was just shmatas. They would stuck in shmatas, and that would at least make it that the person's stump would not come into contact with the hard wood. Rather, it would be somewhat padded. So if it had a deeper receptacle in it that it can contain padding, then it will be tummy. And Rashi says, because now it's going to have a Kabbalah. Rashi says it's an important Rashi, so let's quickly look at it. Tummy mekabel tumas maga. It's mekabel tumas maga, meaning if a sheret touched it or if a mace touched it, it would become tummy. Avolum einloy ala base kibul roy shukoi, but if it's not a deep receptacle, it's just made for the stump to go into. The einloy maniach sham ketisin, and he's not putting in rags. He doesn't have place, a deeper receptacle to accept rags. Lav base kimul l'tuma. It's not considered a base kibul, which would be required to render a wooden keli tamei, and therefore vavle kepshute klietz. We learned this many times that a flat piece of wood that does not have a receptacle does not have a din kabbalas tuma, and we know it is because the Torah that talks about tumas maga talks about klietz in the same pasuk as it talks about a sack. And we say that in order for klietz to become tamei, it has to have the characteristics of a sack. And what are those? The base kibul that it has is designed to carry something. What does it carry? The fact that his stump, that this amputee stump is in the keli, it's not the keli holding the stump. It's the opposite. It's the person using it as a shoe. So that's not called metaltal. However, if it's as a deeper receptacle and you could put padding inside it, that makes it into a kli, and therefore it will be makabel tuma. Again, we're talking about tumas magos. There's going to be
and therefore what?
And therefore, if a mace touches it or if a shirt touches it, it becomes tummy.
And therefore what?
And therefore,
What? Yeah. So how does that affect? How does that affect whether you can walk with it outside?
it does not. It does not. The Mishnah, once it's talking about the status of this prothesis, Lagabe Shabbos, also as an aside discusses its status Lagabe having a din of a keli, Lagabe Kabbalas Tumah. I don't think they're directly related.
It's interesting. It's interesting because Rabbi Eliezer Silver used to use his top hat also as a receptacle to keep his utensils for food in there. Be the same idea.
You know why he used it as a utensil for food? David Lyman is broadcasting a picture of his window, and I see that it's snowing. It's very troublesome. Is that real snow out there?
Oh yeah, it's actually sticking to the ground too.
It's worse than it looks.
I feel like we're on Good Morning America or we're on breakfast television because we even have a video showing what it looks like outside. It's like very realistic. Good morning, Canada.
Here, Akiva, I'll show you exactly what it looks like outside.
So much for those outdoor minyanim of 14 people.
Oh my. Oh my, unbelievable. So Zok the Gemara, we learned I'm sorry, you said about the Revelation Soul, so it reminded me of something. You said the Revelation Soul used to keep his utensils. You mean like his fork and knife, his cutlery is what he kept in his top hat? Oh, it's interesting you say that because it's a very famous story. Revelation Silver never ate by anybody. So wherever he went, he brought his own food. And this way, no one would be insulted because it's not trying to ate by certain people and not by others. He ate by nobody. And there was a story where he was once by Rav Ruderman, and Rav Ruderman's wife, Rebbetzin Ruderman, was known to be a feisty woman. And she served him, and he said, "Oh no, I'm sorry, I brought my own food." So he takes out his own food, he puts it on the plate, and he takes the fork and knife, and he's ready to dig in. And she quickly runs over to him, grabs the fork and knife out of his hand, and says, "You don't trust my hechsher? I don't trust your hechsher either. You're not going to tarf up my cutlery with your food." So could be after that point, he had to start bringing his own.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. At least he didn't go down to the basement and break 400 bottles of wine.
That you can only do if it's your spouse. Happy Mother's Day. Okay, let's talk to Helig Gemara Vayter. Now we're talking about a different type of system of use. Smuchoi shaloi. Smuchoi shaloi are on his stubs. They would sometimes put pieces of leather. So, and Rashi says if someone was missing one limb, they could use this prothesis that he could hobble on. But if a person is missing two legs, then there's nothing to hobble on. So what they would do, is they would put leather pads at the bottom of these stumps, and he would the amputee would literally walk on his stumps. So in order that the bottom of the stump shouldn't get worn out or irritated, they would build like a leather pouch for it to go into. So smucha shaloi tamein medrash. They're tamei medrash because they're things that you walk on. We know that the halacha is azov. Azov has a halacha that anything he steps on, anything that supports his weight, is going to be tumas medrash, even if he doesn't come into contact with it. So, for instance, if azov walks on a board that's on the floor, the Zov walks on a board that's on the floor, even though he's wearing shoes and he's wearing socks. So he didn't come into direct contact with it at all, but the fact that his weight was transferred onto that board will make it tummy, and it's called tumas medrash. It's a chiddush dikatoma that applies only to a Zov. So if he had these leather things, being that they're considered things that he leans on, it also is tummy, mishum tumas medrash. V'yoytzin ben b'Shabbos. And he's allowed to go out with those on Shabbos because those are literally like shoes. But you're allowed to go into the Azara with them. And that's significant because we know that a person is not allowed to go into the Azara with shoes. Yet these, even though they're considered shoes, Lagabe Tumas Medrash, and they're considered shoes, Lagabe going out with them on Shabbos, nevertheless, Lagabe the halacha of you're not allowed to wear shoes in the Azara, they're not considered shoes, Lagabe that. And Rashi tells us the reason is because the Gemara Brachos, when it describes the Isser to go into Harabais with your shoes, in order to qualify as a shoe for the Isser of going into the Azara, it has to be on the end of his feet, which Lo Yalenu, this person does not have. This was the prototype of wheelchair. It was a wheelchair without wheels. So if someone could not put any support at all on his legs because of a condition that he had, Rashi explains the condition as a yofsu kaftu gide shukov. All the sinews and the tendons in his legs have totally died out. I think the article says it's atrophied. His muscles are atrophied, which happens to every person who's not on his feet for a very long time. So the halacha is, first, before we get to the halacha, let's look at the Metzias. So he would sit on a low chair, on a very low chair, and the chair would be strapped to him so that even if his body was raised, the chair would come with him. And then he had two little crutches. And what he would do is, sitting on the chair, he would push down with the crutches to the floor. He'd lift his body up together with the chair that was strapped to his body, and he would push his body forward. And he would use the two crutches to allow him to move sitting on that chair. So the kisei, which is this chair that he would sit on, was smuchai shaloi, and the leather. He would also put leather on his stubs, because as he was moving, he did somewhat balance a little bit on his legs. The halacha is tamein medrash. They will be tamei medrash because it's something that he sits on or that he puts his weight on. The ein yotzim b'Shabbos. These things, these smuchim, you're not allowed to go out with on Shabbos. And Rashi says the reason why he's not allowed to go out with these leather things that are covering his stubs on Shabbos when he's in this type of chair, so Rashi because it's not, he doesn't really need those leathers because most of the weight is on his arms as he's moving things around. Sometimes his foot will hit the ground or the stub will hit the ground. That's not called really needed as a shoe, and therefore you wouldn't be allowed to go out with them on Shabbos. But Rashi doesn't like this pshat. I don't like it. So Rashi Vikol Mimer, the idea of totally since they're not on the ground, they're sort of suspended off of his legs. Zim the Mishtalfi, we're afraid they'll fall off and someone will come to carry them. The Einich Nosnu Behem Bazar, these you're not allowed to go into the Azar with. Rashi the Minal Ninu, they're considered the Minal. Look to min. So these are things that actually go on the street. So we're talking about a person who basically has his limbs. He might not be an amputee, but he can't use his legs. So since they're proper shoes that go on his feet, they would be also. Luktimin, Rashi says tlamashka, which is a mask, but the Gemara is going to have multiple pshatim of what this is. Nasin l'schoik lahavos tinoikus, it's made to lahavos tinoikus, to scare children with a mask. Luktimin, so I'm assuming if it's a mask that scares children, it's probably a Trudeau mask, not a Trump mask. Because Trudeau's is probably very scary. It's amazing how political the Gemara is. Zok the Gemara, looked him into Harim, the Ein Yotzim Behen. They are Torah, they don't have a dinner of Keli, but you're not allowed to go out with them on Shabbos. So this is a big mission. It's a loaded mission. We're discussing prosthesis, like a wooden leg. Then we're discussing this primitive style wheelchair. And then we're discussing Luktimin, and we're also discussing the leather coverings that people would have over the edges of their.
This is very Nagaya. Could be one of these masks that we wear for the COVID-19 also. Are you allowed to go out with it if there's no air?
Pashas you are because you're wearing it. I don't think it's a massive. So now we have an interesting question. The interesting question that we have is one allowed to go out on Shabbos with a cane? In a place where there's no air, is one allowed to walk with a cane? So the question merely is it considered something that he really needs? Because our Rashi taught us that the wheelchair that he uses is something that you can go out with on Shabbos. But the smuchos, those leather things that are on the edge of his legs, it all depends. If it's someone who's actually walking on those leathers, like we discussed, someone who is missing two limbs, those you're allowed to go out with them on Shabbos. But if it's only there as a little covering, but he's not actually walking on them, then you're not allowed to go out with them on Shabbos. So the question would be a cane. Someone who wants to use a cane on Shabbos, what would the halacha be? So he brings down from the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah paskins that if he cannot walk without it at all, he's not just using it for balance, but he can't walk without the cane, he's allowed to use a cane on Shabbos. And the question that a Rav will ask someone who's asking the Shaila, may I use a cane? The question will be very simple. When you're home, do you use your walker? When you're home, do you use your cane? In other words, are you using it wherever you go? Or if you're home and you can sort of hold on to the walls as you walk,
Well, maybe
you do
for
not use it.
well, maybe for longer distances you need it, or for at home you don't need it to go from
Well,
room
so
to room.
that's the point. If you need it for every step, only there do we look at it as a shoe,
Right.
and therefore
So
it'll be mutter.
so-
If it's just
so
an
correct.
assistance, then it wouldn't.
So crutches would have the same din then. Halacha.
Exactly. And people do use crutches in Shabbos, I believe. So that would be looking out. If it's just like a zobun stecken that a Rebbe uses, that of course is not allowed. There's an interesting story with an elderly Yid who got a stecken, and his friend went over to him and says, "Beryl, it's a pastach nicht. You should have a regular wooden stecken. He's not something a shiny zilbun stecken." So he says, "Yankel, ich hatte it with the feast, nicht with the cup." I don't need the zilbun stecken. Okay, so that's it. Now, what about a wheelchair? Is someone allowed to go out with a wheelchair on Shabbos? So the Minchas Yitzchak is machmer, and he says a person is only allowed to go out with a wheelchair if he's propelling himself. He's moving the wheels. You're not allowed to be pushed in a wheelchair on Shabbos, but there are poskim that are mekel that will allow a goy to push a wheelchair on Shabbos. So that's interesting to note.
Today we do that.
Is that with or without an Erev?
Today we have an Erev.
Maybe
If
we
there
have
was
there.
no Erev, even if there's no Erev, a person is allowed to go out in a wheelchair. And there are places that are making that a goy can push a yid in a wheelchair on Shabbos without an Erev. If it wasn't Erev, it's not a shayla. It's funny because I'm learning Mishnayos Erevin with my son, and the Mishnah says that there's a lot of takanas they made not to allow Erevin to proliferate too much. You're not allowed to make an Erev Chetzeres that includes the whole city. You have to exclude part of the city because people need to grow up knowing that there's areas of the city that you can't carry. Because if the Erev takes care of everything, the whole Torah's Erevin, the whole concept of Erevin would become bottle because kids would grow up not even knowing that there's an issue to carry on Shabbos. Okay, let's see the Gemara says right here. Omer lei Rava the Rav Nachman. Rava told Rav Nachman, "Hey chitna." What does it say in our Mishnah? In other words, our Mishnah reads that Rav Yosy is the machmer over here, Rav Yosy is the machmer over here, and Rav Meir is the mekel. How did you learn the nusach of the Mishnah? Omer lo yadana. I don't know. I don't know who's machmer and who's mekel. Maybe Rav Yosy was the mekel and Rav Meir was the machmer. Hilchos Samai. So then Rav asked Rav Nachman, so forget about who says what. Who do we pass him like? Omer lo yadana. So Rav said, that's a great help. Itmar, Omer Shmuel, Ein Hakita. The way you read the Mishnah is not Hakita Yotze B'Kav Shaloi. It's Ein Hakita Yotze B'Kav Shaloi, Divrei Rav Meir. So Rav Meir is the Machmer. Rav Yosy Mater. So Shmuel learned our Mishnah the opposite as to how we have it quoted, as to we have it printed. Ein Omer Rav Huna, Ein Hakita. Rav Huna also learned that the first shita in the Mishnah, Rav Meir, is Machmer and Rav Yosy is Mekel. Omer Rav Yosef, Hoil Varmer Shmuel, Ein Akita. Since Shmuel had the nusach in our Mishnah that Rav Meir is the Machmer, Omer Rav Huna, Ein Akita. And Rav Huna also got the girsa of our Mishnah that Rav Meir is Machmer. Ananami Nisni Ein Akita. We will also change our version of the Mishnah and we'll learn that Rav Meir is in fact the Machmer and Rav Yosy is the one who's Mekel. Matzkaf lo Rava bar Shira. Lo shmir lahu had masna lei Rav Chanan bar Rava lechia bar Rav kamei the Rav the kituna the Rav. This is a mouthful. Did you not hear what Reb Chanan by Rava quoted the Mishnah to Reb Chia by Rav, and it was in front of Rav, and it was in the little oitzer hasvorim that was sort of at the back of the Besmedrish in Rav's Besmedrish. Rashi teaches Akitunas Cheder Katan Shal Besmedrish, a small room. So a lot of rooms, they have a coffee room in the corner, they have a little oitzer in the corner. So they were schmoozing. He had such a clear and lucid memory of the event. We were standing in the coffee room and we were schmoozing about this halacha, and Rav Chanan quoted the Brisa. And what did he quote? Ein hakita yoytze b'kav shaloi div Rav Meir, Rav Yosy Mater. So don't you remember that story? He quoted the Mishnah just how we have it printed in our Mishnah, and umachvele Rav Epoch. And Rav was there. He was maybe sipping his coffee, so he couldn't talk. So he said, "It's a carrot." So Rebbe motioned, gestured to indicate that it's the opposite, meaning that Rav Yosy is the Mekel, Rav Meir is the Machmer. Omer Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, and the way you could know that Rav Yosy is the one who says Oser is v'simonach samach samach. The word Rav Yosy has a samach in it. The word Oser has a samach in it. So the way you should remember who says what is that you should remember that Rav Yosy is the Asers, which is like the reading of our Mishnah, because his name has a samach. The Av Shmuel Hardabay, and even Shmuel, who we quoted a moment ago, learned that Rabbi Yosy is the Mekel and Rabbi Meir is the Machmer. He actually withdrew the comment that he made. Itnan, how do we know he withdrew it? Itnan cholza besandal sheni shaloi. By chalitza, it says that she has to take the Yovim's shoe off his foot. So it has to be a proper shoe, and it has to be a proper fit, and it has to be on his right foot if he's a righty. Well, what happens if she didn't do it by the book? And cholza besandal sheni shaloi. Either he was using a shoe that was not his, or besandal shalates, or a shoe made out of wood. And this is where the Gemara is bringing its raya from, and we'll see the raya in a second. Oy shall smoil b'yamin, or it was a left shoe that was on the right foot. Chalitza kshera, the chalitza will still be kosher. The chalitza will still be kosher. Zok to Gemara. Farminan, we said man tana. Who's the tana of this? And here Rashi says the punchline: man tana the sandal shel eitz choshev nale. Where do you see that even a wooden shoe is considered a shoe? And that would also say in our Mishnah that this wooden prosthesis should be considered a shoe. Shmuel Reb Meir, it's Reb Meir who holds that a wooden shoe is considered a shoe. How do you know that? So you see Shmuel Beferish is quoting our Mishnah to prove about another Mishnah in Chalitza. It's going according to Reb Meir, and his glory is exactly like our Mishnah is, not like the way we have him earlier saying that we flip around the sheets. And even Rav Huna that we quoted, that Reb Meir is the Machamer, he also was choizer from that position. Tanya, Sandal Shel Sayad. The people who did the plaster work, plaster has a corrosive effect. So if you were wearing your regular leather shoes while you were doing plastering, the plaster would ruin your shoe. It would eat up your shoe. So because of that, they had to wear protection over their shoe to protect their shoes. And what they would do is they would have a special shoe called the sandal of Sayad. Rashi tells us that what was it made out of? They wore the shoe to protect their regular leather shoe. It was made out of wood, because the sid would burn it up. Not everybody holds it was made out of eitz. There are those who learn that it was made out of straw, and straw is also called eitz. We're going to see. We'll see it soon. The Tosha speaks about it. And we'll look at Tosha in a second. So whatever it was this wooden or straw shoe that was designed to protect the plasterer's shoes from getting ruined. So Rav Huna quoted Rashi, Sandal Shel Sayadin, Tomei Medrash. It's Tomei Medrash because it's a shoe that he's wearing. And since it's also classified as a shoe, you can make chalitza with it, the yotzin by b'Shabbos, and you're also allowed to go out with it on Shabbos. The Rebbe Kiva. But Rebbe Kiva's friends were not agreeable to him that this is the halacha. We had different brises that said that the people were masking to Rabbi Kiva. Amar Rav Huna, man hoduloi. Who are the brises? Who are the tanoim who agreed with Rabbi Yehuda that this has a din of a shoe? Rav Meir. It would be Rav Meir. Who man loy hoduloi Rabbi Yosy, and who was not moeded to him Rabbi Yosy. So that's again consistent with our Mishnah. Rav Meir holds this wooden shoe is considered a shoe, and that's why it's mutter to go out with it on Shabbos, and just like a sandal shasayadin. And Rabbi Yosy, who holds also, he would be the one who disagrees. So again, you see support that Rav Huna also learned that the shittas in our Mishnah and how they're brought down is the correct way.
Yosy, you said it was to protect their regular shoes. So was it worn over their shoes, or was it worn
Yes.
as a separate shoe?
It was worn over their shoe.
It was worn over their shoe.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Because I would think that for sure you have the opportunity to take it off if you walk out with it, because you have shoes.
And this is exactly what the discussion is about. Since it's not a shoe that you're wearing, and the Gemara is going to challenge it soon, because the Gemara is going to say you're not actually wearing it. So, and the Gemara is going to say it really depends on when you finish work. Do you take it off, or do you actually leave them on and walk home with it? That was the deciding factor, which the Gemara is going to bring out. Amar Rabbi Yosef, man loy hoyduloi. Who is someone who didn't agree with Rabbi Kiva, didn't give these things a status of a shoe? Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, did not kaver shel kash, a basket in the shape of a hive that was made out of straw, ushvayfer shel kanim, and a tube made out of reeds. Rabbi Kiva matame, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri matar. Rabbi Kiva is matame, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is matar. Zok Rashi, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri matar. The lav orcha lasos mikash el mikanim. You normally would not make a basket out of straw, rather you would make it out of reeds. And therefore, uminol nami, and the shoe as well, lav orcha me'etz el me'or. So the reason why Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri we're saying that he argues Rabbi Kiva, and he holds that this sandal shasayod is not a shoe, does not have the status of a shoe, is for the same reason that Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri doesn't give this basket the status of a basket. Because when you make something out of straw, that's not called a basket, and it's not called a shoe. So sandal shasayod shel kashu. He wanted to learn that the sandal shasayod is of kashu. Rashi earlier said that the sandal shasayod was made out of wood. Now Rashi is saying another pshat that maybe this sandal shasayod was made out of straw. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri holds that a keli made out of straw is tar. The law of eighth it's not called wood. Rabbi Kiva ain't chashav law the kashin. So to machlokes, if straw has a status of wood, that Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri holds it does not have a status of wood, and Rabbi Kiva holds it does. Now the question is, straw is not wood. So since straw is not wood, Tosfos has an interesting point. So Tosfos says that v'yesh loimer the kash nami chashav shalates, kash is straw. Straw is the stubble that wheat grows on. Zok Tosfos in the Gemara Brachos, one of the shittas is that pri she'achal adam rishon chita hosa, and it says that adam rishon ate a peri from the eights. So clearly, from the fact that the Torah in the parsha of Adam talks about a chita plant and he refers to it to the nusach of eights, that's how Rabbi Kiva could hold that it has a status of eights.
You said that a beged that is to protect another beged, or something that's to protect another beged, isn't considered to be a beged, and
you're not allowed to wear it on Shabbos. You're not allowed to wear it on Shabbos.
So why wouldn't this fall into that? This
so your question is the sandal shasayodin, where Rabbi Kiva said Yotzim by Shabbos. How can you go out with it on Shabbos? That's your question. Let's see the Gemara. Amar sandal shasayodin tamei medrash. I don't say that I have an answer, but there might be an answer. We'll see if we can figure this out together. Amar sandal shasayodin tamei medrash. The sandal of these people is tamei medrash. It's not made to walk in. So I am assuming for the same reason why it shouldn't be called Tumas Medrash, it's not designed to walk in, it's just a protection over his beged. I think we can ask your kash as well. It should not be allowed to walk out with on Shabbos. It's not a beged, it's not a pair of shoes, it's merely a protection for my shoes. Since the fellow walks in it, if it had no function as a shoe whatsoever, he would take it off as soon as he leaves sight. You take off your helmet when you leave sight. You take off your safety glasses when you leave sight. Why aren't you taking off your shoes? LMI, it does function a little bit as a shoe, and people
Same like
do wear
rubbers.
it because they wait until they get home.
Same like rubbers.
I guess so, yeah, because rubbers you're definitely allowed to wear.
But Yossi, what's the haftamina that you could wear this? It's for a Vaida. Who's working as a plasterer on Shabbos?
Well, even the question is, can he wear these on Shabbos when he's not doing avodah? Right? Of course, he's not doing avodah, but the question is, does this have a status of a shoe? If it has a status of a shoe, for instance, let's say he worked very late Erev Shabbos, and it's almost dark when he's walking home. Can he walk home with those on his feet? He is allowed to, because it was the norm to wear them as a beggar, for at least for Siyam.
Or could he substitute this as his galoshes?
Right. And they're all galoshes are mutter because they're not protecting your shoe; they're protecting your feet. Because if your shoe got soaking wet, your feet would also get soaking wet. Okay, Gavaldik. This is a shikl dry Gemara. Basically, it's he said, she said, who said, you said, who's on first. That's really what it's about. It's the same halachas, and we're just discussing who said what. But the Gemara gets into a very fascinating sugya, not right here, a little bit later, that involves Chaim Tzvi's wonderful presentation about whether or not the unusual refuahs that are mentioned in the Gemara, if they work today. The Rambam says they don't work, and the Gra says they do work. But we'll get there soon. The Mishnah base kibul ksis and tamei. Amar Abaye, tamei tumas meis. This base kibul in the prothesis makes it into a keli. A keli is makabel tumah from things that touch it, like mace and sherets. But the ain tamei measures, it's not going to be tamei tumas measures. Rav Amar, af tamei measures, it would also be tamei measures because you're actually leaning. The handicapped person is leaning on this prothesis. Amar Rav Amina, how do I know? How do I know that there's a tumas measures because he leans on it? The Tnan, a golashal cotton. If you had to shiloh what it is, either it's like a wagon that children use, like we have baby shopping carts that kids play with. It's tamei measures because sometimes the child will climb in it as well. There's another shot. Tosfos learns it was like a training thing. We have these little walkers that children use when they're learning how to walk. So the child leans on it, so it's tamei measures. So Abaye said it's not tamei measures. I don't know if I read the Gemara right. Amar Abaye tamei tumas meis ain't tamei measures, and Rav Amar av tamei measures. So Rav says these are things that someone leans on. If someone leans on them, they support the body's weight. That would make it into tumas measures. Abaye said it's not tamei measures. Why? Hasam samacheluya. There, the child's leaning his whole weight on that walker, on that wagon. But hacha, when you're talking about a prothesis, loy samacheluya. He has a crutch. He has another leg. He's not really putting his full weight on it. That would not qualify that it should be a tumas measures. Now the problem here that Rashi asks Amori the Bakasha. It's actually it's in one line. Amar Abaye, how do I know that in fact this prothesis would not be mekabel tumah? The Tanya, makel shos kenim. If you had a stick of an old person, Torah miklum, the stick of an old person is completely Torah. Why is it completely Torah? And this is a very important Rashi. So Rashi, Torah miklum, loy medris, loy shartum. It's not tamei al tumas maga, nor if you put your weight on it if it's a zov. This stick is not made primarily to support you. A person who has a stick primarily is walking and putting his weight on his legs. Even though from time to time you use the cane as a little bit of a balance and you put some weight on it, but it's not the primary support for the body, and that's why this stick is not tamei tumas measures. And it won't become tamei if anything touches it as a keli. The pshute kli etzu. We know that a kli etz will only become tamei, as we learned earlier, if it has a base kibble, and if it doesn't have a base kibble, it can't become tamei. Alma afagav the zimin the mistamachalei. You see that something that you lean onto occasionally, from time to time, similar to the prothesis as well. Since you only lean on it from time to time, therefore, hoyel ve'ikra shiyasa ein yelakach. Since its primary use is not to, since its primary use, David, I'm going to mute you. Okay, I just muted you. since its primary use is not to lean on, it's just to help balance you a little bit. Therefore, the kach eina tmeya measures. That's why it's not tamei al tumas measures. Zok Rashi, we said that the stick cannot be makabel tuma. Why? Because it's a psuta klietz. So why do I need a special reason to explain why it's not a tumas measures? Because I'm not really leaning on it. Why don't you say it's psuta klietz? And flat pieces of wood that don't have a base kibble in it are not tamei. So here's Rashi's big kiddush. Don't suggest that just because it's a psuta klietz, and for that reason it's not makabel tumas maga, for that reason it should also not be metamet tumas measures. Lehuzkur at the highest psuta klietz elo tumas maga v'oil. The tamim mishum the iskus l'sakri. They have a mace with shrots from vacation. Where do we know that psuta klietz is not metamet? It's because when the Torah lists the kalim that can become tamei from a mace, or the kalim that can become tamei from a sheretz, the Torah lists eitz together with sak. So therefore, we learn that eitz will only be tamei if it has a base kibble, if it contains something. But that restriction, those details are not relevant to tumas measures. Therefore, even if it's a flat piece of wood, if it's something that someone puts his full weight on, that would become tamei tumas measures if the person was a zov. So we have a problem here because Rabba said that it's tamei tumas measures. Abaye is a very good raya that it shouldn't be tamei tumas measures. It's just like a stick, a cane, is not tamei tumas measures because he's not putting his full body weight on it. Well, a prothesis that we're talking about should also be just like a cane and should not be tamei tumas measures. So after Gemara, Rabba hasam litrutze sugya avida. The cane that we're talking about that says has no tum at all, that's because it's doing even less than this prothesis. Because literally, Dr. Rashi, it's only made l'sakim p'siyaisa, v'lisa koima, v'pnei sheraglo v'shuka v'reishisois. He's a man who shakes, he's a man who's a little bit unsteady, so he's not actually using the stick at all to support himself in any way. Rather, it's just being used to steady himself. But when you're talking about a prothesis, he might not be, his full weight might not be on it, and it might not be on it the whole time, but he is putting a lot of weight, a big portion of his weight on that prothesis, for so much weight is leaning on it, and therefore it's metamet tumas measures. So really the machlokes between Rav and Abaye as to whether or not a prothesis is metamet tumas measures is what constitutes measures. Do you have to be putting your whole body weight on it the whole time? Thank you very much. Or if you sometimes put part of your body weight on it, that's also enough to be metamet tumas measures. Zok Gemara. The main measures.
Yes. Can you just explain a little bit, just the particulars of tumas measures, just a little bit?
Yeah, the Torah says.
What you understand it to be?
Yeah, the Torah says that anything that a zov or that a nida walk on will become tamei. That means even if they didn't touch it. So, for instance, if there's a board on the floor, there's a piece of plywood on the floor, and a zov walks on it, even though he's wearing shoes and socks and boots, so he's actually not touching it. If there's a blanket over a piece of wood and the sheretz goes on the blanket, the piece of wood underneath the blanket does not become tamei because tumah didn't touch it. So here you have a way of truma being transmitted without a direct contact, because the zov walked on something, and the fact that he put his weight on it makes it tamei. And the same thing with a nida. If a nida, if there's a famous story. Who's the story with the princess who she slept on 20 mattresses and there's a pea under the bottom mattress? That's where you do with tumas mattresses. Even though she's on the top mattress, and there might be 30 mattresses there, the bottom mattress will also become tamei, just like she was on the mattress itself. Because if someone's weight is on something, that's what tumas measures is.
And it's only for zav and nida. That's it.
Could be a mitzvah as well, but it's not by tumas sheretz and tumas mace. Tumas mace and tumas sheretz can only be transmitted directly by touching something.
So would all agree that the thing under the leg of the prosthetic leg does not become tumas medrash? It's only a machlokas if the leg itself becomes tumas medrash?
What do you mean by the thing under the leg?
Well, like you said, if you walked on a piece of plywood, if a zav would walk on a piece of plywood, then the piece of plywood would become tamei.
Correct.
But if there was something on top of the plywood, the thing on top of the plywood would become tummy, but not the plywood itself.
If it was Tumas Maga, by Tumas
Sorry,
Maga.
Tumas Maga. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So is that the same case here? They're arguing over the leg itself, but not the thing under the leg?
No, under the leg is also Tumas Medris.
Uh-huh.
Because he's leaning his weight on that too. Tumas Medris, anything that your weight is leaned on, anything that your weight is leaned on will be Tumas Medris. So anything you walk on, provided that it shifts a little bit. There's a whole separate case if he's walking on a massive boulder, could be we don't consider that Medris. But any normal thing that he would walk on that would feel his weight, so to speak, it becomes tummy, but a mere fact that he just put his weight on it. So I think Avigdor brought up a point. If you hold like Abaye that this prothesis is not tummy Tumas Medris, so how could the thing underneath it become tummy? Right? That's what you're referring to. Well, I guess if it's just under that leg, but if he's walking on the surface that both legs are on it. So your question is, what would be if there was if he had 1 foot on one surface and another foot on another surface, and the prothesis was on another surface? So I would agree in that case that the thing that's only under the prothesis, I would agree would not be Tommy Tumas Medris according to Abaye, because if he holds, it's not considered properly transferring your weight onto the prothesis, so then it's also not transferring your weight onto whatever supporting that prothesis. I would assume that's logical. I think that's what
remember we had the case of the cloth that was gimel, and the question was, is it so small? It was not. Did we not say if that cloth is so small it doesn't become Tumas Medris? Like the handkerchief, right?
Anything that's not normally used to walk on, it will not become.
So if that was underneath if that was under the prosthetic leg, it may or may not become tummy.
Correct.
According to
Correct,
this
because that's a different reason why it's not subject to Tumas Medris. If you had a cell phone
it's just
underneath
so
the guy's
small.
leg,
I'm saying it's so small it could be under 1 foot and not the other.
no, but it's also something. Anything that's not made to walk on also does not become tummy Tumas Medris. If it's something where people will say Amoid v'nasim elachtenu, get off of it. For instance, if you lean your weight on a bucket, on a Home Depot bucket, since that bucket's needed to be used for the work, it's not a stool, that would not become tummy Tumas Medris. Or if you had a heavy-duty cell phone that didn't get crushed, and the Zov stepped on it, the cell phone would not become tummy Tumas Medris because it's not something that's designed to walk on. We had a Brisa quote in front of Rabbi Yochanan. You're allowed to go into the Azara. Omer Lay. So Rabbi Yochanan said, how could you say you can go into the Azara with these shoes? Ani shayne isha chalitza's boy. I learned a Mishnah that says that this is kosher for chalitza. So it has the full halachic status of a shoe. But Amrit Nechnasen, and you're telling me that you could go into the Azara with it? Tani, therefore change it and say Ein Nechnasen Bahen Lazara. In fact, you're not allowed to go into the Azara with these items. So where it says over here, Rabbi Yochanan changes that, because if it's a regular shoe and it has the full status of a shoe, even to the point that it's Tommy Tumas Min to the other with those items because they're shoes. Okay, now we're up to look to min. What are look to min that are Torah? So Rashi in the Mishnah said it means a mask. But we have multiple shittas in the Gemara that also spreads out to further multiple shittas in the Rishonim. My look to me. Amar Bavo Chamra Da'akva. It's called a Chamra Da'akva. A Chamra Da'akva was a fake donkey that performers used to use. So they would literally be sitting on a model of a donkey, and their legs would be spread around it, and they would be straddling it, walking, and it looked like they were riding on it. But in fact, the donkey was suspended by shoulder straps off of the person. So when he was walking, it's almost like the Flintstones car, because even though they're driving in the car, but it's their feet that are moving the car. That's exactly what it was. The performer would straddle this animal, this fake animal. So it was a fake donkey. It had absolutely no value as a keli, and therefore it's going to be tar. It's kishiri. Kishiri, Rashi says, is shemahalchin ba b'mokum tit. There were these little stilts. Whenever they were walking in somewhere very muddy and they didn't want their shoes to get dirty, they would walk on stilts. And Rashi says Kashali, the need to harm to Mismaga, they might not be a Keli, the Pshuta Kaleitinu, Avol Mana Medras Lamatarin, Rashi wants to know, still support the weight of a person. So they should be Tumas Medras. Why does the Mishnah say there's no Tum at them at all? And Rashi says, and Tosha's answers, Kivin the She'enam Asuyim Elolechas Der Chavar B'Tit, since it's not really made to walking, just to get over a tit, ain't Tummy Medras. It's not Tummy Medras because you don't walk in it normally. You just use it in areas to get over certain areas. And according to Tosha's, that would not be B'Tama Tumas Medras. And he brings up the Aruch that it's Ashkut, which means She'asham Elatzonim Ben Gvoy Me'oy. These are very high stilts that were made. They were not made to walk. They were made to perform on, and therefore they're not matama to mishmei. So they're like circus stilts. When the Rabbi Bar Hulam parmi, Rashi touches as a mask, but he brings down here that there's other pshatim in what it might have mean. It might have been some type of pouch that they kept under their face to catch their saliva if they couldn't control the flow of saliva. But whatever it is, all these things do not have a din of keli. So now we're talking about skulas and refuas. So when we talk about skulas and refuas, Rabbi Kiva Eger in the Gillion of the Shulchan Aruch says from the Maharil that these refuas do not work. They don't work anymore. I hope you won't protest. They don't work anymore because the Shtanu Ateva. And the Maharil says these don't work anymore because the Shtanu Ateva. Kiva Eger says that because of that, it's also to do these things. Because if you're going to do these things and they're not going to work, it's going to come out that people are going to lose respect for the words of Chazal. And really, it's the Shtanu Ateva. So therefore, Zokr Kiva Eger, you're not allowed to try these things because it's going to lead to a Chilul Hashem. That's number one. The Rashba says a very interesting thing, that all of these refuahs only help if you actually believe in them, if you believe that they're going to help, which is like a Chassidish approach. But I want to tell you, it's not a Chassidish approach, it's actually a Litvish approach. And I'm going to tell you why. Because there's a famous
there's something called a placebo effect, right?
But this is not placebo, this is real. It really helps if it works. And I'll tell you why. We just learned Tazria Mitzvah, although we didn't learn this of Torah. In the Torah of Mitzvah, there's a story about 4 Mitzrayim that were locked out of the Machane. And in the Machane Yisrael, there was starvation. It was starvation. People were dying. And these four people, they were floating around outside the Machane, starving to death. So they said, let's go to the enemy camp. Let's go to the Machane area. We have nothing to lose. We're going to starve to death anyway. If they kill us, they kill us. But if we stay here, we're going to die anyway. In the meantime, in the city, the Navi got up and said, tomorrow there's going to be such a crazy abundance of food. Food will be worthless. There'll be so much food. And one old man said, Mr. Navi, how exactly do you expect to accomplish that? Hashem going to open up a window and it's going to start raining food? Doesn't make sense what you're saying. So the Navi said, unfortunately, it's going to happen, but unfortunately, you're not going to be able to benefit from it. Sure enough, so these 4 people to go to Machane Ram, and the place is desolate. It sounds as if they just left on a moment's notice. And in fact, the Navi tells us that a nace happened, that Hashem brought a tremendous noise to Machane Ram, which sounded like a huge, overwhelming army. The entire population of Aram panicked and ran for their lives, and they abandoned a tremendous wealth of every type of item, including food. So they went back to report it to the city, and when people in the city found out that the Machane Aram nearby has an abundance of food ready for the picking, there was literally a stampede of people running to the city. And this old man who denied that the Navi would be able to accomplish that, he was trampled to death. So Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, who's hardly a Chassidish Rebbe, asked Akasha, what did this guy do wrong? If you don't believe the words of a Navi, there's no Chiv Misa for that. I understand if you violate, but if you don't believe the words of a Navi, it doesn't say anywhere there's a Chiv Misa. Dr. Chaim Shmulevitz, the whole koyach for a Navi or a Rebbe to be poyalois for somebody, or even the koyach that a father has to be mefarnas his family, is the battery, the energy, the source of the power to accomplish that comes from the people who believe in him. So a child believes that his father can take care of all his needs. That is the koyach with which a person has that koyach to do it. And the Navi only has a koyach to be poyalois for people as long as they believe. And therefore, it wasn't a chiv misa. The Navi just didn't have the koyach to be poilos for this yid. So in fact, it makes sense what the Rashi was saying. If you don't believe in it, it doesn't work, because the belief in it is what makes it work. And maybe that's what Chaim Tzvi meant when he said placebo effect. When you believe something's going to work, that in and of itself could make it work.
I did not.
Okay, shkoyach. So that's a story of Chaim Tzvi. So now we're going to look at a very interesting. Mishnah. Habanim yotzim b'ksharim. Children are allowed to go out with ksharim. Ksharim were knots that they made in a certain type of wood that had some type of healing effect. Uvnei malachim, but kings, they go out with zugim. They can go out with bells, because that was their derech. And really b'chalodim, really anybody can go out with bells. El shadibru chacham b'hoiva, the chachamim are saying these cases based on the norm. Just like we learned in the last Mishnah, that Arabian woman would go out with this type of head covering. When the Mishnah tells us about certain practices, it presented them in what would be expected. So the Hasidim learned pshat in this Mishnah b'derech melitza is a bonim lamakim yotzim ksharim always have to remain connected. Wherever we go out in the world, we always have to remain connected to the Rebbeinu Shalom. They have to be like bells. They have to be broadcasting to the world about the Rebbeinu Shalom. So you have to be connected. And the Bible told you have to be broadcasting to the world. Really, it's really what we all have to do. I once heard over a story from a shliach, and he said over that he married a Beis Yaakov girl, because there was a time where not every city had a Beis Chayim Mushka, so they had to marry regular Beis Yaakov girls. So when they discussing during the engagement that they're going to go on the shlichus, his wife told him over something that her Rebbe in seminary told her, and her Rebbe in seminary told her that if you take a kettle of piping hot water, bubbling, and you immerse it in a big bathtub of cold water, no matter how hot that kettle is, and no matter how it's bubbling and how vigorously it's bubbling, it's going to be overwhelmed and it's going to be cooled off. So how can we go on the shlichus? So this bacher asked the Rebbe the Shaila. The Rebbe says, you're 100% right. That's exactly what's going to happen if it's not plugged in. But if the kettle remains plugged in, not only will it not cool off, but what's going to happen is eventually the entire bathtub is going to be kachi. And that's the story of the shlichus. You got to go out there.
You don't get electrocuted though.
That's right. So that's
Avigdor, I knew you were going to say that. I knew Avigdor was going to tell us that was going to happen.
And I was thinking of modifying it to an immersion heater. So I'll call upon them. So that's what you see from here. We have to always stay connected to the Rebbeinu Shalom, and what the Bible was saying, by staying connected, you're automatically going to be vizuk, and you're automatically going to be causing everybody else to bubble over. And then the Bible says, El Shadibu Cham B'Hoiva, Zotel Bible Rebbe, Dibu Cham B'Hoiva, whatever the Cham say, Hoiva, das ver, because Tzaddik Gozer, B'Kodesh Baruch Hu Makayim. So Dibu Cham B'Hoiva, whatever the Chacham say, that's what's going to happen. So let's get into these remedies. Mike Sherm. Omar Adamori, Omar Rab Nachman Bar Baruch, Omar Rabashi Bar Avin, Omar Rabbi Huda. Kishure Pua. It's not of a certain type of plant. The ArtScroll does identify the plant, what that plant is. It's where does he say what the name of it? He says the name of it. He does say what the name of the plant is. It's
a madder plant.
Plant of a madder plant. Right. So Rashi says, but it helped for something. Amar Abaye. Now we know Abaye was a Yosy, and he didn't have a mother, and he actually was raised by a nurse, by a housekeeper. And the word Abaye is Rosh Tevis Asher Becha Yerucham Yosy. So the woman who raised me told me, Klosa Mukmi. If you have 3 knots, that'll stop it'll prevent the spreading of this disease. Chamisha masu. If you have 5 knots of this, it's actually going to be so powerful it's going to heal you. And Shiva, afil kshafim ali, it could even stop kshafim from happening. Amar Bar Yaakov. There's many rules. Otherwise, you can never see the light. You see how it should never see rain. It should never hear the sound of iron, meaning it never did a day's work. The Kol Tanagolta, it should never have woken up early enough to have heard the Tanagoilus. That's my parish. It means you could never heard the noise. The Kal Nigri, or the noise of the carpenter. So the way I games, never saw rain, never heard vitamins, never had a job in his life, never woke up early, never heard the word. Means someone who never ever worked a day in his life. I'm thinking of a typical who grew up spoiled in his parents' bed a light of day. Only such a prepared thing would be from working on
Yeah, so you got to check your connection. Maybe on the wrong band.
How is it possible to be able to pair this with all those restrictions? Me?
Yeah,
So
you're breaking up.
very choppy.
The connection, the plug to the kettle got unplugged.
So am I coming through clear or is it not clear? Can someone shake their head up or down or right and left to tell me?
Keep talking. Better now.
Breaking up.
So you can't hear me at all. Oh, it is. You know what? Let me shut off my video. Let me shut off my video, because if I shut off my video, then I need less memory.
Go to sleep.
Okay.
Right.
Does it sound a little bit better now? Could someone shake their head? Or it's still bad?
Yes.
It is better?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm not using up bandwidth on video. Okay. There's nothing to see on my face anyway. It's okay. So could someone tell me?
Still choppy.
Maybe you switched internet connections by mistake. Maybe you have to go back to the freebie. Oh, he's totally gone. Maybe they don't want us to hear about these things, these chaloimus.
Please shut off their video, or someone who doesn't have the video on, tell me where you were able to hear last, because the video feeds are using too much bandwidth, so I'm not able to hear.
No difference.
Maybe you should stop the live.
The last we heard was in Brachas.
The last you heard was the Brachas. What Brachas?
The Septus Brachas.
Oh.
Maybe you should stop the live feed.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the Mishnah, not the Mishnah, to the Gemara. No. We'll go quickly. Mike Short.
No, we're up to Abai. I'm Abai. I heard up to
was already explaining Ravaka Bar Yaakov.
I heard Kol Nigro was the last thing. Like the Tarnagol and Kol Nigro.
There are so many restrictions as to how this will work that I'm not going to be today.
Yes, you got to stop the live feed.
Never be able to prepare it under these tight conditions. To YouTube. Okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to stop the live feed. That's a good idea. Let me see how I do that.